So Laugh, happy Monday, dude. I really like our slot of doing these on Mondays now. After the electric wake and Jake this morning, and just a fun way to start the week. Get your mind thinking about what's to come.
Yeah, I agree. I like it on the same day. I'm actually catching the Wake and Jake a little bit more often now, and got that farming alpha this morning, and got that IKB alpha on DFS. So it was it's already paying dividends just being able to listen in.
Dude, you read my mind. I was definitely looking into IKB a little bit, and for sure I'm going to be trying to do that a bit more, especially with the finals going on right now. It's like, all right, I don't mind watching a little basketball, farm a little Blast Gold in the background.
Yeah, do you know? I didn't even know Blast had anything to do with it. So that was something I learned today. I just thought it was another DFS website. So go figure. So now I'm gonna farm some Blast Gold with it too.
Dude, yeah, I'm looking forward to the Blast Gold farming. And for those of you guys who missed Wake and Jake this morning, there should be a recording of it up later today or tomorrow, where they go over Blast farming. But yeah, it's a relevant tie-in because we've seen a lot of rotation, I think, back to Blast over the past couple of weeks. And we're still kind of in the tail end of the rune hype. It's about a week and a half to 2 weeks removed from the launch of runes, block 840,000. And I think there's some interesting and exciting things going on. As always, WAF, there's plenty for us to talk about. But I still think we're in sort of that pullback mode from the height of rune hype, ordinals hype. And, very curious as always, just kind of where your head at is that where's your head at this week? And what's top of mind?
Okay, so we're about 10 days removed from the halving. I think we're kind of all experiencing a halving hangover right now, as I would like to say. The market's kind of slow, a little bit down. I mean, I think also Bitcoin price being down kind of flows down to the ordinals and to the runes and everything else. So even though there's kind of like a bearish sentiment out there, I think it does present some opportunity for some of the things that if you were priced out before, you might have an opportunity to get into. I think there's a lot of like uncertainty out there, and the markets definitely don't like uncertainty. Just from the macro perspective, I would say, we have probably inflation or stagflation they're talking about, and they're also talking about the yen's, I guess, decline, and if rates are going to go up or down. And those are things I typically don't look at when we're very bullish, but now that we've been kind of in a lull, you kind of get forced to look at it and consider it. But for me right now, I think this is sort of like this much expected having hangover is what I would say.
Dude, really nice term there. Gonna have to coin that if it's not already. But yeah, I definitely am experiencing some having hangover, some ordinals fatigue, and I think it's pretty normal. I mean, I think it's definitely still inside of that bull trend in terms of just where crypto's at as a whole. I'm still super bullish Bitcoin. But I totally agree with you. I think there's some really good opportunities of things to look at that have just not been at these price levels for a while. And it's, something we've seen before. I think that's the big thing to point out. Like a lot of us kind of joined during that 2021 ETH cycle and have seen this kind of price action before. A lot of people in MVHQ are here even before that. But even people who are new, we just came out a few months ago of that bear. And we had a few waves of things pulling back and then shooting off. It was just at a lower scale. So like when I first started trading puppets, there would be days when they would go up to 0.05, 0.06, and then come back to like 0.03, which is still 50% movement. It's just at that smaller scale. So I'm not super surprised. Obviously, it would be great to just ride a parabolic line up into the sunset with ordinals and runes, but it makes sense that a lot of the money that's just in the ecosystem rotated out to a certain point. Maybe people didn't like how runes went. Maybe people were kind of burnt after Merlin, which we'll talk about and give some updates in a little bit. But it's definitely, a pullback in a larger market. Now it's just a question of, do we go higher towards year end? And all eyes are on Bitcoin. If Bitcoin can keep pumping and go up to break 68K, as Jake pointed out earlier, and reclaim that leg and go, mid 70s, high 70s, I'm sure everything's going to pump with it. But there's definitely a lot of uncertainty right now, just with war threats, some world markets, having some bad headlines. So we'll certainly see. It's definitely an interesting spot, but there are some things I've been buying, which I'm excited to talk to you about.
Yeah, I want to say even the runes. I mean, there's been some clear winners. I would say Arsic looks like a clear winner. I think Dog Go to the Moon is a clear winner. Some of those earlier mints are semi holding up. The Satoshi Nakamoto, it's like $2.33, so it's still in the green and profit. So you definitely had some winners. And then there's like the degen mints that kind of been going straight to zero. So you got to kind of avoid those. I think in periods like what it is right now, it's best to go to like the best in class. And then we've had that Prometheans snapshot now, so you've seen that ordinal go from like 0.09 down to 0.02. So kind of expect that room to be somewhere in the middle there, like worth 0.07. That's how I would speculate. Because if you look at Runestone, if you add up Dog Go to the Moon, you add up Lobo, and you add up the Runestone, you're probably at what, 0.08, 0.09. So you're basically even from where the original snapshots took place. So I would kind of expect something similar to that for Prometheans. So there's opportunity to pick up stuff like that. As you mentioned, Merlin, we could definitely talk about Merlin. I think there's huge opportunity there with it trading around 63 cents, which seems to be quite oversold. So I think this goes back to where you have conviction, and you know what, you bet on your conviction. And I think this is a good opportunity to do that. People tend to not want to buy anything in times like now. They get a little gun shy. But this is the time where you should be looking to pull the trigger, in my opinion.
Yeah, great perspective as always, Waf. And I mean, a lot of times buying the dip does work out. Do want to, of course, give the disclaimer: anything on the show is NFA, not financial advice. But these are coming from people who are right here alongside you at MVHQ, looking at the price charts, trading every single day. So that's just our own personal experience, and we never know exactly what's going to happen. But we do have some experience trading some things. But yeah, definitely want to hear your thoughts, Waf, on sort of what you think is worth buying on these pullbacks. And I totally agree with you. I mean, I think that's just something that I've learned this year. And I mean, I've talked about it across all the different forms of content we have, but just buying the dip is like so powerful. And a lot of these collections that I was priced out of when they started running, and Node Monkeys were 0.8 and Puppets were 0.5. And it's like, damn, I wish I had another Puppet. It's like, cool. Now I have the opportunity to do that. And to your point, looking at the winners and what's been crushing, like those are the things that if they're crushing right now when a bunch of liquidity is leaving the system, if it does rotate back, those are things that'll probably launch a lot stronger. So 100%, really glad you called out RSIC. That's one that I bought a pretty decent bag of over the weekend. So that was been pretty cool. Up a little bit on that so far, but I'm going to just keep holding it. Like, I think when I'm looking for conviction in ordinals, it's either just a really, really, really committed community or builders who continue to deliver and exceed expectations. For me, RSIC just set off the entire rune trend, right? Like, once we knew runes were coming, they were the first project. They did everything right and kind of set the industry standard, in my opinion. They airdropped to everyone their ordinal project. They created some intrigue. They airdropped more to the holders with the boost. They didn't have to communicate what the airdrop's going to look like. They didn't have to crowdsource or crowdfund. Like, they just did everything, executed, and didn't like hype it up or shill it or anything like that. So that, plus their partnership with the Memeland team, and then getting listed on OKX, the major exchange, it's like they are doing everything so right and just crushing it, and it's still so early runes. So for me, that's like my number one rune holds, and I feel pretty bullish on it.
I don't know if you can hear me, because I guess I thought you were getting rugged, but maybe it was me that was getting rugged. Yeah, I totally agree with you on RSIC, 100%. It is my number one rune holding by far and away, and it's not even close. I think, to echo what you just said, That team is doing everything correctly. That OKX listing, if you're in a country that you can stake some Bitcoin to mine that, I'd suggest doing that. I'm unfortunately not able to do that. So they do have some RSIC to give out, OKX. If you looked at time sensitive, you could find all that information there.
Whoa, I did not realize one of us was getting rugged earlier, but I'm glad you share a similar sentiment, WAF. Yeah, like RSIC is absolutely my biggest rune bag as well. My second biggest is Satoshi Nakamoto, but it's like a tenth of the size of my RSIC bag. And yeah, I mean, it's just like looking at comps in the market, I definitely expect RSIC to hit $1 billion market cap at some point, just in terms of like what runes are. And now that they've teamed up with the 9gag crew, and Memeland, who I think are also really good builders and have certainly delivered, even when ETH was in an absolute bear for all intents and purposes. Like they delivered through and through, and they have the resources behind them. So I feel just really comfortable with that team and everything that's going on there. I do think as a major catalyst, we have the Hong Kong ETF on Bitcoin gets approval. Was that in 2 days or tomorrow? Do you know?
I believe it's tomorrow, Tuesday. So actually tonight, I believe it'll start trading. If you're on the East Coast in US, it'll start trading tonight.
Oh, wow. Yeah, very exciting. So I'll say this. When we saw the US Bitcoin ETF approval, it was a bit of a seldom news moment. It got really jacked up leading up to that. It sold off a little bit, and then the pump followed through. And I'm kind of expecting a similar pattern. I think the market it really hasn't fallen all that much given like the global news that's going on with really high inflation numbers, with potential war threats coming on. With all of this being said, it really hasn't fallen as much as I thought it could have. So I wouldn't be surprised if we fall further. But the ETF news being present here, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bit of a fade. We chop a little bit more. But if the actual cash flows from that hit and like a ton of money starts being pumped into Bitcoin, the inevitable usually happens, which is that, Bitcoin's going to keep going up. So that's kind of my thesis for this whole bull run is just, hey, I'm bullish on Bitcoin. There's ETFs that are going to be set up globally. As more and more big countries come in and set up ETFs, it's going to continue to pour in across the globe. I think it's just going to become like the global standard since Bitcoin seems to be the one that's the most widely accepted. And it's the OG cryptocurrency. So in my mind, it's just a very straightforward thesis. If Bitcoin does well, ordinals do well, runes do well. So just all tying it back to what you said earlier, WAP, I think we're going to see some really good opportunities. And even if we chop lower before we go higher, like I'm very comfortable just DCAing into these high conviction plays.
Yeah, so personally, I don't think we have like a lot of time to like DCA into stuff because I don't like to get into the macro too much, but I'll read some of these articles by these gigabrain people that are much smarter than me, like Arthur Hayes, and he was kind of expecting mid-April till early May, call it like lull in the market, just from people having to sell to pay their taxes in the U.S. Just kind of like the end of certain trades, like the end of the halving trades and stuff like that. And then he expects liquidity to like kind of arrive back in the market in May, where I guess the U.S. government will be like flush with some cash that they receive from people paying their taxes, and they'll be leveraging that and like levering it up and putting it back into the economy. So I don't know if we have that much time to like DCA to stuff. So I think, in one way or another, I think we're at the end of this current low. So that's what I'll say about that. And then just kind of going back to RSIC for a second, the way they kind of distributed those RSIC tokens to the Memeland farmers, we saw instant like 100K additional users, and then we saw after they completed the staking and received their RSIC, they pretty much like dumped it onto the market for very low. So I think right now RSIC is around 24 sats, and it went down as low as I want to say maybe 13 or 14 sats. Just looking at like what I see going forward, Prometheans is dropping 4.5% of the supply to like other ordinal communities. So what I could see is potentially when that token hits the price being low while people sell like those small bags off, and then it runs up just like R6. So I'm going to be looking to buy the Promethean rune as soon as it hits the market. So I think it's coming like today at some point.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that's a good shout, Waf. I really wanted to talk about that a lot. And it looks perfect timing. I think Asla was just asking us about it. Prometheus is a weird one, right? Because I think so far we've seen the trend of Ethereum projects that try to pivot to Bitcoin just kind of get stomped. I think the first one was really Deadfellas, and then we saw a similar pivot from On One, and that did okay, but then it kind of just petered away. But they're definitely showing off their technical prowess and their ability to build. And, just thinking back to really who were the Cyberkongs, they led a lot of the space. They were one of the like OG NFT projects on ETH to just, rip a hole in the ceiling and show us all like these projects can have crazy valuations. And they implemented a whole ecosystem with banana tokens. So like, that was 3-4 years ago. And like it's the same exact team who now managed to get the second rune on the entire blockchain. So the fact that they were able to get the second rune, I think they absolutely crushed it with the name decentralized. Like that's, shortened to the point. It's one word. It's still 13 characters. It encapsulates the value of Bitcoins. They crushed it there. That being said, it still is a project that came from ETH. And that's where I think there's a little bit of nuance to like what's going on. And I'm not entirely sold on them yet. Cyberkong's market cap, I think, is below what Prometheans is right now. So it's just kind of an interesting math problem of like, what happens when a company or a building team has an IP worth something on one chain and then they do something completely different on another chain? Will that valuation carry over? Will it have to be less? We're not fully sure. So I think they're showing that they're going to build, and that's really bullish. Like anyone who's actually building and can do these big deployments, secure these great names early on, all of that's super bullish. But just the fact that it is a team that's been around and they're trying to breathe life into, I guess, just themselves, that makes me feel a little bit cautious at the same time. So curious your thoughts on all that.
Normally I'd say yes, I agree with you, but I think Cyberkongs, they've come through humble coming to Bitcoin. I think, not only the name and getting the number 2 rune token, but also their decentralized ordinal, right? That was like almost like a 4 megabyte block, right? It was like the 10th largest. So I think they're showing like that technical expertise. It just seems like they're just doing things right, and I think people are rallying behind them. So and it looks like people want to see them succeed. So I do think they're kind of an outlier compared to the normal ETH projects that come to ordinals to cash grab to take advantage of an opportunity. Whereas it looks like they're not really doing that. They didn't do a paid mint to like raise some cash and because there was an opportunity on Bitcoin. Like they did an airdrop to the community based on whatever criteria. And they're just showing their technical abilities. So to me, I think they're going to succeed.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, like I tried to start with, I guess they definitely have a lot of bullish indicators on them. I think it's just a matter of we haven't seen this exact mix, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But for sure, I mean, they already are off to a super hot valuation. The Prometheans, were at what 0.08 before the snapshot was taken, and they're still holding at like 0.02. So yeah, definitely, I think a good one to watch. But to your initial point of people are probably going to be dumping small bags after the airdrop, I totally agree with you there. I think there's going to be a very nice play if you can find the bottom in the Prometheans drop.
Yeah, scoop them up right away. And then there's also been the speculation that potentially the Promethean Ordinals winds up becoming some type of PFP collection. I've been trying to dig onto Twitter, onto their page, to try and find some clues about that. I'm not 100% sure about that. There's still 21,000 of those. But that speculation could lead to a price rise in the Ordinal and maintain some value there. So I do think the Ordinal is actually a decent play as well.
Yeah, well said, Laugh. I mean, definitely. I think with the runestones we saw, Leonidas keeps harping on the fact that those entitle you to 2 more airdrops in the space on top of Dog, which already came out. So, I mean, if there's any additional value just to holding these Prometheans, a future airdrop or some sort of PFP, it definitely could be a good buying opportunity. I also am very excited. We have a special guest joining us for this episode of BossDawgs, someone I wanted to get up for a while here, but we got Lizard Capital in the building, who, just to shout him out, got me into ordinals a few months ago, was the one to put it on my radar just to take a second look. But he is just an animal of a trader, really good at just playing positive EV stuff and, finding pockets in the market to trade in. And I know he's been spending a lot of time in ordinals as well as prepping for runes. So happy to have him on the show today.
Yo, hey, what's up, fellas?
Hey, what's going on, Blizzard?
Chillin', man. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, dude.
Of course.
Definitely curious if you have any thoughts on sort of where we're at. I know you joined a little bit late, but WAF sort of set the stage. We're in a bit of a rune hangover, just kind of the post-halvening, expectations, what the outcome's been, some cash flows out of the market. So just curious if you have any thoughts about where we're positioned and where we might be heading in the near to long term.
Yeah, sure. I missed what you guys said earlier, but I'm pretty surprised with the lack of interest in runes. Just comparing, like, what I always do is, like, I just use volume as like a proxy for attention, because like everything in crypto revolves around attention. Like, it's an attention economy basically. And I typically on other chains, like, you see coin volume just absolutely dwarfing NFT volume, and that has not been the case so far. So I think people are treating runes like they were advertised as shitcoins, and people aren't really treating them that way. They're kind of treating them as like inscriptions at this point. So I don't know where we go from here. I'm kind of just waiting and seeing, because I don't feel like there's too urgent of a need to be like buying stuff before we see like more interest coming in. At least is where I'm at right now.
What runes are you, I guess, most bullish on if you had to make a selection?
Oh yeah, I mean, I am actually holding my entire RSIC bag that I was airdropped, and then Satoshi. I'd say Satoshi and RSIC are the two that I'm pretty bullish on. I don't have any like dog, but I think that'll probably do well. Like I'm thinking, like, what are the things that if like an institution were to want exposure to runes or some other whale that just found out about them, and I think like those three in particular are a pretty good bet for what they would flock to first. What do you think, Wef?
I'm right there with you. I agree. I think it's RSIC, it's dog go to the moon, sort of like a forced meme, but it seems to be holding like its value. And then Satoshi Nakamoto, I just think the name itself is going to, it's like the obvious choice. Even now, it being down, if it, in the future we see it up, it's going to be one of those things where we look back in hindsight like, oh man, like that was easy. Why didn't I get into that one? And I think I think also,
I got rugged there. Is everybody else rugged?
Oh, yeah, I also got rugged. WAF, you might be getting rugged on your end there. Ooh. All right, WAF, I hope I'm not talking over you, but you're currently rugged. But yeah, we were talking earlier, Lizard. He definitely has a bullish stance on RSIC, dog go to the moon, as well as Satoshi. But I'm curious, just based on what you're talking about in terms of volume and that being, an indicator of where attention's at, have you seen any other places in the market that might have the attention that possibly could have gone to runes, or is it pretty much just staying within ordinals and just staying put in that category?
Yeah, dude, I've honestly been so like nose down in runes that I haven't been paying too much attention to to other stuff. So I'm interested to see what other people think, but like, I kind of thought the Merlin unlock was going to be a catalyst, and I don't. Ross, do you think it has been so far? Have you seen like more volume come in, or what do you think?
No, I don't really think so. I mean, I think like I haven't seen any collections that have really pumped off that much. And if I was to see a big inflow of volume, I'd probably look for collections across the board to go. I mean, you can usually see that, like when volume's going to NFTs or Solana or whatever, like if it goes to Sol, you'll see all the meme coins up in huge clips, like mostly across the board. And then same thing with Bitcoin. I think if we saw a ton of volume going back into ordinals, we wouldn't be seeing the lag on these floors that we're seeing right now. And if it wasn't ordinals, then I would expect to see like not just one project's runestones. Like I know R6 up a little bit, maybe Dog go to the moon is, but I would expect like 30 plus runestone collections pumping in tandem to indicate, okay, there's a lot of volume coming back into the space. So I haven't seen that quite yet. I'm not entirely sure where all this volume is going to. It might just be exiting the market a little bit as people do have some uncertainty. It also was just tax season, so it's possible it exited and like we'll have to wait for another catalyst to come back. I'm very curious with like the blast airdrop happening at the end of next month. That to me is a potential major catalyst just for crypto as a whole. We saw with Blur like a year ago, once that first airdrop hit, just a lot of collections ran after that huge stimmy.
Hey, you guys can hear me?
Yeah, we got you back.
Hey.
All right. I'm not going to re-answer, but what I'll say is just to add on what you guys are talking about. We also have two runes, like two of the biggest runes have not hit the market yet, and that is Pups and Magic Internet Money. I think that's going to bring a whole lot of liquidity as well. And there's no timeline on those things yet too, so that's gonna kind of infuse some capital injection and some more life into runes, I think.
Yeah, great call. Yeah, those are going to be sick. So there's no timeline on those yet, you said?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. So I would expect when those two hit the market, they're probably going to be in the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, Magic Internet Money is like the GOAT rune name. It's like, in my eyes, like, I think there's a pretty safe floor on that one.
Not only that, but the BRC20 right now is trading under $5. I mean, that's a good snag in my opinion. I mean, these were as high as $12, $13 until that terrible announcement. But I could see these back to $8, $9 in no time. So right now, under 5 is like a buy in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Waf. That's pretty sweet. I mean, it's nice just based on how they're doing their allocations, you can kind of calculate what the Wizards market cap would be right now. So for people listening, it's pretty much just the market cap of their ordinal collection plus the market cap of their BRC20 collection. At first, they announced that they were going to airdrop it to public and then part of the team. But they've since changed that up. Mavenbot, the guy who is launching Magic Money and got that rune etched, he pretty much just said, no, like, not going to do that. Just going to keep it to those two communities, proportional to their market cap. So yeah, you can follow along at home, figure out what the market cap is, and then buy accordingly. But to both of your points, I think that's a really good ticker, one that, is just so synonymous with Bitcoins. And I think encapsulates the original vision of runes of being, or maybe the expectation of runes, that they're sort of shitcoins on Bitcoin. Like, that one kind of has more of a shitcoin vibe to it than some of these other rune projects we've been seeing.
Agreed, and they said it's gonna be like 95.5 for the BRC20s, so it's definitely the play to just buy the token as opposed to buying the ordinal, which is I think has come down to about 0.24 now, which is also probably a good buy if you're into it. But it's a small collection. I think all time not that much BTC traded on it, so I just go the BRC20 route on that one.
Can you guys talk a little bit about the number of characters needed for these, like names, and when that's released, or like why that's even a thing?
Sure. Just got breaking news, by the way, that Decentralize is live. It's being airdropped right now. Shout out to Oslo for providing that info. On the letters and stuff, Casey, he came out with this code that you needed 13 letters, and then every, I want to say, couple weeks or few weeks, it drops by a letter. So I think right now we're up to like 12 letters. It's only 12 letters. He didn't want like all the best 4-letter characters like taken like right off the bat. So that's why he came up with like this process. It's kind of like a dictatorial decision. I mean, he came up with it. It wasn't like a community thing. And that's where we're at. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword now, because now like the best names maybe come in the future, but they won't be the early runes, right?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and it's like it's still gonna be so like when something like Pepe unlocks. So like basically the way they unlock is like, I think for the 12 letters, I think like 12 Z's was available like almost right away. And then it was like 11 Z's and a Y, and it goes like down. So you can actually predict like what block certain names are going to come out in. So I mean, like when good names are about to unlock, like you can expect there to be a fight for them.
I mean, I guess that's good that it's always going to keep up some anticipated event, right? Like moving forward, it won't just sort of like all die, which is kind of good. But no one's done this before, so it's all experimental, and we just could take our best guesses at it and see what happens. Even his uncommon goods, I mean, right now there's no rush to mint it. It's like, number 0. I think at some point we'll see sats down like super low when we're deep in the bear market, and that might be a time to mint them. But I think right now there's like absolutely no need to do it.
Yeah, dude.
Agreed there. That's it's just that the supply is going to be so high that like I just don't. I mean, maybe in like 10 years, you know what I mean? Like that's just a super, super, super long-term play.
Yeah, like that's a super long-term play that probably will play out, but I'm not really looking for like the next cycle yet while we're still in this cycle.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's pretty funny that there's just so much traffic. I mean, you'll see in like every block that comes out, a majority of the runes that are being minted are uncommon goods. But yeah, I'm sure at some point the thesis will play out. It is really interesting, though, to your point, Lizard, that there's going to be anticipation for all these names that will slowly come out over time. But I am curious, 2 weeks removed or 10 days removed, what are your guys' thoughts on sort of the actual significance of an early rune? And just kind of the runes that have come out the pipeline at this point. There was a lot of speculation leading up to runes that it might have been the first 1,000 that were important, maybe the first 10,000, 20,000. But at this point, we've seen a mixed bag of rune projects coming out of the pipeline. There are going to be better and better names as runes come out in the future. So just curious your guys' take on that, looking back on it.
Listen, I'll let you answer that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think it's going to really depend on, it really is uncharted territory because, like, there's 2 different worlds combining into one. So, like, in the inscriptions world, early is important. In the shitcoin world, it's not important at all. So it's going to depend on, like, which of those basically wins. And I think just given like the Bitcoin crowd that we all know, I think the early will always have some significance. But for like, who knows? I mean, maybe the top 10,000 will eventually be significant, but like personally, I'm targeting like top 50, like top 30. Like are the ones I feel really good about. I mean, you could push it to top 100. I think those are like the ones that I personally really would feel safe about, like with that thesis. But then, I mean, if it goes the other direction and this really does become shitcoins, like the best shitcoins are what's going to pop. It's not going to, I mean, the early ones will have some kind of a floor, but like I would not be surprised to see something later end up taking like the top position.
Yeah, mostly agree with you. I think there's going to be no provenance for being early. You're going to have to find some additional identifier. These pre-rune projects killed it. I think like they're the top projects. You look at the ones that were deployed, I guess call it that were on a project until they were deployed. Like not that many of those are actually doing that well. I mean, there's a couple of call it winners out there, but for the most part, it's these teams that were kind of already like going to work and already established doing things who then dropped the rune, got an early one at that. So it kind of took away that ability for someone else to, get that thing, get the early spot as like their claim to fame. These pre-runes kind of like doubled down and were already good and then got an early rune number and kind of just solidified themselves in the space. So I think they'll continue to be relevant. And then I think as we move forward and like those other key names unlock, the communities or teams that who somehow secure those and build something around those names will also like rise up, I think. And of course, if you're going to take shots and spray and pray, I guess top 100 is probably makes sense. You do see this new thing now that we should probably talk about is people inscribing runes as basically one of ones and creating collections like the punks. I don't know if you guys got in on that. Or what are your thoughts on that? Well, that's going to increase like the number of runes as well. Maybe we get to unlocks quicker that way eventually. That I don't know, maybe not. But just want to hear your thoughts on those.
Yeah, I think in regards to just the number of runes, it's really interesting. Like, if that is a trend that catches on, I mean, you really could see a top 1,000 rune being like really scarce, or just the floor increasing on it just for that reason alone. Yeah, Waf, what are those trading at now, those punks?
I mean, I think they've gone way down. I want to say, I think the last time I looked was like 0.0007 or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, like my personal like trading style is like I don't think I'm very good at choosing what's going to pop off. So I kind of wait for it to pop off and then join a little late. When I first heard about that, I was kind of like, I kind of thought it was a little silly just because like this is this is like designed to be a fungibility protocol. So to use it to make something not fungible, I mean, it's like, it's crypto. That was bound to happen. Something like that was bound to happen. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, I mean that's why like it could give the early runes potential value just because there's so many runes following it, but at the same time you have different size because they're fungible tokens. You have different size markets caps or token economics on these things. So I don't know how it's really possible. I guess we'll see. But Liz, I'm kind of curious. We have you here, so let's ask you some questions. Let's ask the guests some questions. What are some ordinals that you're like bullish on?
Hey, did I get rugged there for a second?
You're back there. Did I get rugged? I was asking you, Lizard, if you what ordinals are you bullish on?
Yeah, man, I'm bullish on pups and natcats, and I think like natcats is just my every time I want to sell them, I look at them and I'm just, it's like the Marge Simpson meme. I'm like, I just think they're neat. Like, I just think they're so like unique. And I just feel like they have to pop off at some point. Pups, I think, are at this point pretty hard to fade. And then, I mean, obviously, like node monkeys, I think will always do well. I'd say those are pretty much my three.
Yeah, it seems like the trend for all three of us is sort of just like gravitating towards those blue chips and just collections that have been proven to be successful. And I mean, I think it makes sense, right? Like we've talked about this so much the past few weeks. Laugh is just like being early to something. And in terms of just where we're at now, with runes literally coming out 10 days ago, you can't even mint all of the different possible names available yet. Like, you know, we're still so early to this Bitcoin ecosystem that emerged about a year ago. So it kind of just makes sense to go for the stuff that's still within reach. Because if you have the comps of the height of the bull, 2021, 2022 ETH NFTs, you know, Bored Apes going for a few $100,000 a pop, and now the top ordinal collections are going for still like $20,000 floors. I think there's just a lot of upside to those names that have already proven themselves. So to your point earlier, Lizard, of just like waiting for these projects to pop off and then go based on what's sticking, it seems like just following those that have already proven themselves makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of merit to it.
Yeah, the other benefit of holding those right now is that like we're almost guaranteed to get more runes airdrops. So I feel pretty comfy holding a puppet right now. What do you guys think of like, nothing has ever flipped punks in any ecosystem? Like, do you think that's something that is like possible? Like, is it on the radar? Like, if that starts to happen, are punks just going to go up? Like, do you think an ordinals collection is realistically going to be able to surpass punk price?
Honestly, if something was going to do it, I think it would be OMB. And I think it would just be because there's always been this like talk about ancient Bitcoin whales. I don't know if you hear about this at all, or just like people refer to it. It's almost just like a lore to an extent. But there's definitely merit to like, those would be the richest just crypto natives in the entire space, right? People who are like mining crypto on their phone 10 years ago have a huge endless stack of Bitcoin. And the same thing, I guess you could say for Ethereum. Like puppets are always, I think, that first edition Charizard, just like the first to do it. So I always think that they would be the highest. But Bitcoin maxis can be super stubborn. And if there truly are enough Bitcoin maxis who just have billions to their name, I don't see why they couldn't do it. So if they were just like, yeah, no, we don't give a fuck. And like they, I think, would come with sort of a sense of elitism of like, we want the price to be as high as possible and to gate access. Like the people in Bitcoin would be the ones who could pull that off and would want to do it. So I definitely think it's possible.
I think my choice would be Taproot Wizards to be like that collection, because it's a low inscription number, and then it's like, again, it's the Bitcoin whales, so that they can definitely make that happen.
Yeah, that's on the money, I think. But both of them, I think, yeah, man, Taproot Wizards are going to go insane. That is going to be awesome. I think Ross, you're right. Like from an NFT trader perspective, it makes no sense for something ever to flip punks. It just doesn't like work with our perception of everything. But like, I think the important factor is like, yeah, just like how rich some Bitcoin people are, and like a lot of the rich Bitcoin people aren't into ordinals, but if something were to shift and they were, then like, yeah, there I guess there's no reason why it couldn't. I think you're right there. Are you? I guess we don't know much about Taproot Wizards. I was going to ask if you had like a plan for them, but I mean, it might be another year, right?
I think I'm woefully unprepared for Taproot Wizards. I don't even have a Quantum Cat right now, so maybe like a Quantum Cat is the key, or at least an ability to get on a whitelist or a raffle or something, because the Taproot Wizard is something that's going to be so coveted and sought after. I think it's not going to even be funny.
Yeah, I was going to say, I see Bless is listening in on the audience, and no pressure because I know you were not prepared for me to bring up your name midway through the episode, bro. But I know you and I were talking in DMs the other day just about Taproot Wizards and Quantum Cat. So if you're free and want to pop up and just talk about what the missions in Quantum Cat server have been like, just got a ping from JD at the same time that OpCat slash BIP 420 is going to go live on Signet on Tuesday. I honestly don't know enough about this OpCat stuff. I know it's like very, very, very deep Bitcoin history and ties a lot to, I guess, Quantum Cats and potentially what's to come for Taproot Wizards. But yeah, if anyone in the audience, Bless, if you're there, or whoever else has a Quantum Cat or knows a little bit about OpCat and its significance for Bitcoin or Taproot, would love to have you up here and talk about it.
All right, Liz, do you play around with Bitcoin Layer 2s at all?
No, I'm not too familiar with them. What are the like main ones that people use?
Well, right now it's primarily Merlin chain, and I know Ross, you wanted to talk a little bit about that, and we could always bring the conversation back to Ordinals for sure. But they kind of fumbled the unstaking. You're supposed to be able to unstake before the halving. They were a little late, but now the unstaking has been taking place, which led to the airdrop of their Merlin token. When it was trading pre-market, it was as high as like $3.20. It's now all the way down to about 62 cents. Ross, what do you think about that? And I'll give my thoughts after.
Yeah, I mean, my honest thoughts, and I'm just going to be candid about because I know I definitely respect the DCA play in terms of just buying this dip. And like, I totally agree with you that there's not going to be a better time than after this huge flood. I personally just wanted to get out of there. I staked a lot of Bitcoin with Merlin and also staked some of my NFTs where still have no idea what's going to happen to the airdrop that went to them. And yeah, like I made a little bit off the Merle drop and sold that somewhat early. So happy to have gotten something. But I'd say just the opportunity cost of keeping it staked up was pretty bad. So it was just something that I wanted to be done with. So I have a negative bias towards the project. I think it's still like my biggest thing is an L2 would be useful if the network fees were crazy high. And I think going into runes, I thought that we were going to be seeing like 2,000 sats per VByte for the next month. But things have kind of cooled down a little bit and pretty consistently, we got like 20 sats per VByte yesterday, which it's still a fee, but it's not bad. So the fact that it's not as high as we thought it would be, I don't really know what the onus on having this L1 is, or L2, sorry. And I think what makes me slightly skeptical about the whole thing is that it's not even technically an L2. That's where like the founder of Merlin, he said that himself. It's not an L2, but all of my competitors are calling it an L2, so I wanted to call it that so I could compete with their marketing. So like you have these things emerging that aren't even what they're marketed as. I don't really know how much audit or like how much clarity goes into these kinds of infrastructures. We sort of saw that firsthand with the unstaking snafu, if you will. So I'm personally not touching it at this point. I think it certainly will come and emerge as Bitcoin gets more popular and the network gets congested. But for right now, I'm just kind of like happy to be done with that chapter, candidly.
It's interesting because I feel like a lot of people feel the same way. I was also happy to get my Bitcoin off of there. And then I'll just say, like to your point about the fees, I mean, I look at L2 as sort of like you walk into a restaurant and they have first floor seating, and then if all the seats are taken, then they take it upstairs, right? And that's what the L2 is. It's like when you get taken upstairs. But right now you got seats on the first floor, so there's no reason to go upstairs, right? And then if something happens, if there's like a fire in the building, right? You don't want to be upstairs, right? It takes longer to get out. So I think these are factors that work against L2s. And when Bitcoin gets really hot again, then maybe these L2s take off. Because, there's tens of projects working on L2s. Like Merlin's not the only one. I think they're just like the only one or the first one to come to market, but there's a lot of L2s coming out. There's a lot of L2 staking mechanisms that basically mirror what Merlin's doing. And I know they're like far more popular, I want to say, in the East and like Asia and stuff. But I'd be remiss to completely ignore it. I would say keep it on the radar. I know people have a bad taste in their mouth from it. But usually that's the time when it's best to invest when it feels gross, right? So I think I'm keeping a lot of assets on Merlin to playing with it. Still playing with my Hoo, my Voya, my Merlin swap. But yeah, but my staked assets, I always wanted to take them off, and that's still my plan. I've gotten my BRC20 off, my Bitcoin off, and now just my ordinals are next. I think there's gonna be an opportunity there. I think at 60 cents, it's just really cheap. A 1.2 billion fully diluted value for something that I kind of initially expected to see at 10 billion. I think is a great opportunity.
Walk through the metaphor god. That restaurant metaphor was awesome. Yeah, I think the thing with L2s, and this goes for like Arbitrum and Blast and everything as well, is like a lot of the tech is the same. So it just depends on other, like, what people use. So like that, I'm at kind of what you said of keeping an eye on it. I'm not personally using them, but like if something starts getting a lot of use, like I'm not gonna fade it because they had a bad launch or something like that. Like, so I guess that's what I'm waiting for, and maybe it will be Merlin, maybe it won't be Merlin. As far as like the unstake and like the token, like that aside, are people actually using the chain Merlin, or like can it be used right now?
Yeah, it could be used. That you could use it via like Merlin Swap, which just seems like its main DEX, and they have tokens that you could trade there. You can do like liquidity pools. It's got all of that now. It has pretty good volume at the moment.
Cool, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check it out.
I mean, they even have a launch pad. So like Merlin Starter is like their launch pad. Merlin Swap is their number one DEX, and then Merlin Chain Merlin, the Merl token is their governance token. So that's sort of like their kind of building blocks for their ecosystem. Ross, any collections you're looking at recently since we last spoke? I did bring up Doge Punks last week. I don't know if you remember, but they had a really nice pump earlier this week. I don't know if you noticed that.
Dude, I did. Great shout out. Yeah, those are doing awesome. I definitely think that I'm just looking to get a quantum cat at this point, honestly. Looking to do that. Definitely kind of with Lizard, like I have a bunch of nat cats, and the thought has crossed my mind at some point, like, oh, like let me sell these. At one point they pump back up to like 0.04, but it's just like it's such a fun project. So I just have a ton of them. I'm probably not looking to buy too many more at this point because I've just been DCAing since 0.13, just like kept buying them and buying them on the way down. If it goes to like below 0.02, I think I'd probably buy a lot. But yeah, I'm probably just looking to get a quantum cat and a second puppet if possible. I do think that there's a lot of validity to that, and I love your shout earlier, Waf, on just the Wizard BRC20. Like, it's just kind of a no-brainer, again, going back to like being able to calculate what the market cap of Magic Internet Money is going to be. Like, you just know how much that could be worth. So I personally think once that's established and runes come out, whether it's in a shitcoin sense or in a Bitcoin sense, Magic Internet Money is probably destined for like $1 billion market cap, I'd have to imagine. So it just seems like a really easy buy in another easy DCA. But you know, I'm still taking all of this in the context of we're still in a bull market within crypto, and I do know that things can change quick. Like, I don't think the most likely outcome is full-on escalation to war, but if it does happen, I want to be prepared for Bitcoin to fall back to like 50, K potentially. It's not likely, but just looking at the chart and like how fast it doubled and tripled in value and got up to that 60K price, like it happened in a very condensed timeline. So whenever I look at charts, I always try to take in the possibility, at least more recently with my trading game, is just like, where could it actually fall to? So just knowing that things could fall a lot further than we want. I'm not trying to like time the absolute bottom. So it's more of just like, what is my bankroll support? When can I get some entries into these projects? But yeah, probably those that I listed.
I think similarly to the Wizard BRC is the Pups BRC. I mean, right now it's trading at $25. This thing was trading over $100, like not maybe 3-4 weeks ago. So that's another one I think is a little bit undervalued at $25. But again, that also ran up very quickly too. So maybe it's just a time to distribute and accumulate at these levels until the announcement happens. And I think once that announcement happens on when the rune is going to drop, these are going to pump. So I think it's you probably could get in before the pump at $25.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call off. And like, honestly, if you buy a little bit and the price goes lower and you leave a little bit of room to buy some more, it's definitely not going to go to zero. Like there's some floor built in there with pups. The community just fully embraced it because I don't think it was sent out from the founder of Puppets, but it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, the community's on board. That's their token now. They're getting runestone. So I do think that's a good play. I did want to ask Lizard, since we got him here as our guest, you've been through a few different crypto cycles now. And when we first started with, ETH NFTs a few years ago, it was like projects poised as future companies. And that's what allowed them to run, is sort of the buyer's understanding or speculation that one day these companies are going to get huge. And here we are a few years later, and we're seeing a very similar pattern with ordinals like we've seen with NFTs. What do you think people are looking at now? You talk about the influx of volume. Like, to you, or from your perspective, is there something that a project can do to differentiate themselves? Like, what kind of actions are you looking for either a successful ordinal project or runestone to sort of give off the impression like, oh, these guys are the real deal?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think my opinion on it has definitely changed a lot since 2 to 3 years ago. Because I also thought that those crypto projects were going to become companies and make money and everything. I think now, the market, I feel like, has more accepted that this is, for the most part, gambling. And so, I think a lot of the, facade that there was a lot of real value in most of this stuff kind of has gone away. And it is just, PvP gambling at this point. But as far as what I would look for, if some project does something really innovative and interesting, I always try to get on board with those because you never know what's gonna be the next big thing, or also if it might actually be a revenue generating thing, because I'm sure there will be real value creation in some parts of crypto. You know what I mean? I think much of the price is not real value creation, and most NFTs and probably almost every shitcoin is not real value. But if you can find the pockets that are really innovative, that's something I definitely try to get in on early and with size.
So, hey, Lizard Capital, where do you think we are in the overall market cycle right now?
Oh man, I have no idea. I'm not too much of a macro guy, and I'm personally pretty cautious about the election time, I just have no idea what's going to happen. Like, I think like I've been operating under the idea that we're probably going to be okay until then, as far as like a major drawdown goes. But I mean, I could easily see like the bull case where we just keep rocking, especially if rates end up being cut, and then I mean the election could even be like a bull catalyst. So I don't want to be caught on the wrong. I don't want to have like a bear bias either, because the upside could be like substantial. What do you guys think? That's not really my area of expertise.
I don't think it's mine either, but I would say it's so uncertain. It's hard to say because we can see a summer lull followed by rate cuts and like a kind of a big bullish like swing into elections, or we could just stay bullish and then sell off after elections. So it's kind of hard to say. So that's why you gotta prepare for, I guess, every scenario. So actually, that's why I'm kind of interested in like what is some of your like profit like taking strategies, and then when you do take profits, like what do you like to get into? Like, do you get into cash? Do you get into stables? Like, what do you do normally?
Oh, sure, yeah. So I'm pretty short term. Like, I pretty much when I buy something, I usually try to have a target of when I'm going to sell it, and it's usually not very long. And I also don't trade like native currencies. Like I don't trade Bitcoin or Ethereum like just on spot. I just think it's too hard for me. I know that a lot of people are good at it, but I just think the smaller markets with less institutions and just less competition are just a lot easier. So I typically will sell probably earlier than I should, but like my philosophy is like I'd rather sell too early than too late, and then just kind of hold like a moon bag and then stay like for the most part liquid and just try to get in on other like new stuff while the hype is there. So like Quantum Cats is a perfect example. Like when it came out, it was really hype. It was an easy swing trade the first day, and then it like just slowly chopped lower for like a month, and then it recovered. So like that's for like my particular style of trading, like that chop area is like not something I'm interested in. So like my play was like I bought it, I sold it, and then had I re-entered, like I would have been trying to buy it after a dip. And then if there's not a dip, it's just like, oh well, like it happens.
God, I think as long as you stay, I guess, true to your strategy and you're pretty disciplined, then it works, right? I mean, I think for me, I kind of freelance a lot of that stuff, so it's kind of hard to stay disciplined. But yeah, it's always good to hear other people's strategies just to like see if it makes sense to incorporate it into my own. So I appreciate the feedback on that.
Oh, for sure, man. I mean, what do you, when you say freelance, what do you mean by freelance?
Like I won't necessarily take profit right away. Maybe I'll take a little bit, and then I'm just gonna hold my bag and see where it's going. If I'm like very bullish, I'll hold. If I'm not, I might sell the whole thing and not even keep a moon bag. So I don't have like one, call it like strategy. It really just varies like by feel. I would say.
Nice, yeah. So you probably are like. Would you say you trade more on like conviction alone?
Yeah, conviction is like my primary, I guess, reason to get in and out of things.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And you've clearly nailed it on some pretty major ones. Especially like you've gotten into some stuff like really, really early. Like, how do you? I guess you don't have to share your secrets, but like, what's your process like that for finding like this stuff really early and entering with like pretty decent size?
Well, I think that's one of my main strategies is to when I when I'm feeling convicted on something, I want to get in early with size, because what happens typically is you kind of like nibble a bit, and then you get like the really big gains, and then you go bigger at that moment, and by then you've kind of like ruined the opportunity to make your really really big bags. And then also I would say that's what makes it a little bit more comfy to hold when you get in early and you hit for a big win. Even if it retraces by like 50% or whatever the case may be, you're so in profit that you can hold it and see it through. So like that's kind of like my strategy, is to kind of go big early, and just try and hold as long as I can. I mean, sometimes you wind up round tripping things. It is what it is. But if I could hold something, especially through multiple cycles, then I know like I'll be profitable. Like when I first started out in crypto, I used to just like DCA Bitcoin, and that's kind of like how I got in. So I was always buying no matter what, whether the price was up or down. So that smoothed out my entry, and that made it easier for me to hold. So I kind of just taken that same approach to like anything else I get into, really.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, that's like finding stuff like that early is like the biggest like asymmetric risk possible. It's like for a lot of them, it's like you lose like $300, but the upside is like $100,000. So I mean, I think those are like the best possible trades you could do.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I try and go for those. I mean, I probably just in this cycle alone probably had 4 or 5 like 6-figure hits. So I think like I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing, like try and reach a goal that I think I'm going to just shoot so high that even if I don't make my goal, like I'll kind of be close enough that I actually like consider it a success. And I'm just trying not to limit myself in like what I think I could achieve this cycle.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you a full-time trader, by the way?
I am not. I still hold in real life job, and I do this sort of like on the side and in my free time.
Okay, nice.
Wow, that's awesome, dude. We have to put you on a poster for inspiration. Just put the Pizza Ninja up there and say, "I shoot so high that even if I fail, I still achieve something." That's sick, dude.
Thanks. Yeah, that's how I try it.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like I have a in between of two of your styles because I've really been trying to up my trading game lately. And, I think when I was trading ETH NFTs, a lot of it was just being early to the space. But I was just like a serial paper hander a lot. So definitely had some experience flipping and taking profit early. And now I'm sort of at the point where it definitely is a matter of conviction, but it's also just seeing the pockets of opportunity. And Lizard, I have to attribute like a lot of the approach to your field reports you put out a few months ago just on poker strategy, or just like I think it was your journey of becoming a full-time trader and just kind of what the grind includes. So looking at everything through a risk reward lens has really just like shifted the game completely. And I think there is a space for conviction within the risk reward, which is that if you find a project early on where if it goes to zero, great, like that's it, right? Like when I first saw puppets, it was only like $1,000. So I was like, okay, I can buy a few of these, and if it goes to zero, whatever. But then as I just stared at them more and more and more, and just like saw the art in the community forming, I was like, oh, this is something I really want to hold on to. So when I first saw them, I was just flipping them very quickly because I was like, this is great. I can flip these for 0.01 Bitcoin and make like 700 a pop. But once I really saw that they could be something special, that's where I felt very comfortable through a risk reward lens of, well, hey, there's only a few $1,000 downside, but the upside of these is like, 5 figures easily.
Yeah, that's awesome. And honestly, I think we're kind of there with ordinals as a whole. Like, yeah, some of them are expensive, but like if you look at the like Ethereum NFT volume at its peak and compare it to Bitcoin now, it's like we're not even close to even that. So like, and I think there's more money on Bitcoin. So like just holding ordinals at all is like pretty asymmetric at this point, in my opinion.
But do you ever think it's going to get back to that level again? Because like I want to say like summer of 2021 going into like the spring of 2022 was peak NFT season, right? Like, do you think it ever gets to that level on Bitcoin?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Like, I think, like, one realization I had recently is kind of like, if these are only going to be PFPs and like there's no promise of future gains, like everybody only needs one. So like, I think that the demand is probably not quite where it was when everybody thought ETH NFTs were going to be like big companies. But I think it just depends on like adoption. Like, I think ordinals are really cool. I think they're really interesting. And yeah, there's like laser eyes who think they're terrible, but for the most part, like even Bitcoin people think they're pretty cool. So I think we got room. I don't know that we can expect them to do the same numbers that Ethereum NFTs did, but I think we at least have room from here. Because like how many traders even are there that are trading ordinals? Like less than 5,000, I think.
It might even be less than that because I think there's not that many active like Bitcoin wallet addresses. Even like when you start factoring in how many people own different addresses.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, to chime in, I thought about it a lot, and I think that what happened with ETH NFTs, like the factors just aligned perfectly. You had a crazy run up in tech in the market where a lot of people made a lot of money. It was COVID, so we were all at home in front of our computers, and just a ton of people got, stimulus checks that were able to go into the market, and it was easy is the other thing. Like, it was just for the first few months just like a money printer where you could go in and make it. So you had a lot of people who just like, for the first time, myself included, were just able to get this money from the market, and it wasn't this PvP environment, like you said, Lizard, that we're currently in, right? Like, it's a lot of trader versus trader right now, and you have to figure out how to navigate it. And beforehand, it was just like, we're all going to make it. Like, you don't really see WAGMI that much anymore in this space because it's more like cutthroat and competitive, and everyone has the same idea of where the value lies. I mean, you see it time and time again. There's just a project that gets like super hyped up, everyone's in on it, and then it's just a dump fest and it's over. So I think it was a really rare set of circumstances that led to ETH a few years ago. I definitely think we could see it again, but it really is going to take a widespread adoption. And this is just zooming out, beyond ordinals and everything else, where I've sort of been finding myself very bullish on Bitcoin this past year. It's just like with inflation getting so high, lots of different countries across the world adopting it as an accepted currency and more standardization around it. I do think in a few years we might see that huge flow into ordinals. So back to your point, Lizard, asymmetrical risk. It's just like I'm pretty much comfortable buying Bitcoin at any price point at this time. Like if it keeps dipping, I would love to keep buying because it just seems like it's going to be so impactful world currency that I think it could get back to that point of ETH a few years ago, but it's going to take a lot of time for people to learn how to onboard into this ecosystem.
Yeah, do you think that's a pretty big barrier at the moment?
Oh yeah, I mean, without a doubt. Like, I really try to step back sometimes and just think like how easy this is for the average person, and not to flex, but I've looked into making some tutorials of how to set some of this stuff up through like MVHQ content team. And Bitcoin is just so much more complicated than ETH. Like even something that to me, and I'm sure everyone on this call, seems super easy, like setting up a MetaMask wallet and getting ETH, the ordinary person has no idea how to do that. And I would say that's gotten a lot easier and expedited through stuff like Robinhood and Coinbase. But even then, they're just setting up like bank accounts. It's not actual, like, not your keys, not your currency kind of deal. So the process of setting up, Bitcoin wallet on Unisat or Xverse, knowing to set it to, Taproot or nested SegWit, initializing your wallet, creating UTXOs, like all this stuff that we've learned since ordinals have come around, the average person is just years away from understanding any of that.
Yeah, I agree. Imagine trying to explain to someone that they're getting front run and you need to speed up your transaction, and it's just not going to happen. And do a child pay for parent transaction.
Yeah. But it's not going to work unless you checked a certain box, right? It's all, it is all complicated.
Not to like sound like a Debbie Downer on all like the bullishness though, because I am bullish long term on everything crypto, Bitcoin, ordinals, and everything. We still can have really sluggish and bad bear markets, and it would not surprise me, in the slightest that we would see a downturn like eventually, and when it comes to ordinals, like I don't know how that impacts their price, because even at these prices, they're pretty elevated. If you figure down the road, the Bitcoin price might be 100,000 or 120,000. Do these ordinals maintain floors like this in a bear market? In a bull market, yeah, of course. Like we always talk about node monkeys to 1 Bitcoin and stuff like that. But in a bear market, like would it have paid off to sell and wait for a bear market to re-enter? Because the ordinals could easily drop. I mean, 75%, 80%, maybe 90%. Like no one knows, and that would be like my fear heading into like a bear scenario holding ordinals.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely valid. I think that's where a lot of people got caught with the ETH stuff, and then you end up just holding it for like a year or more.
Yeah, and then eventually you capitulate and sell, and even if you sell for a gain, you left a lot of profits on the table. Like if you saw your Bored Ape go from 150 ETH and now it's down to like 15 ETH as an example, like eventually that hurts, especially if you have like multiple, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right. Do we got any questions in the crowd or anything? I think we're just kind of chewing the shit a bit, but let's see if there's any questions out there.
Hell yeah. Feel free to tag us in voice chat or Ordinal's thread here, but I enjoy it. I like shooting the shit, especially with a guest on deck for this week's episode. I mean, it's just nice to get some macro perspective and think about where we're at from time to time. But I think it all goes back to just the question earlier of like, when do you take profits and when do you scale in or out of stuff? And I think something that's interesting, is when markets turn bullish and you get an inflow of volume, that's usually like when that transition happens is the best time to invest. And I forget what the name of the trader is. It's that guy who made a huge bag shorting Terra Luna right before the FTX collapse. He mentioned that in terms of trading shitcoins and meme coins, a lot of people mess up because they'll see something early that they're bullish in. They'll like dip their toe in the water. And then once it takes off, they'll buy a lot more. And I think that's very similar to what you said your approach was for ordinals, WAF. It's like you see something early, you don't want to just be nibbling as it's going up and then buying big. It's like just start buying big. If you're not like fully sized in ordinals, or if you're scaling out here because there is some uncertainty and it goes lower, then you're in a great position because you'll have so much liquidity to buy more from the low once it reignites. But even if it does swing higher and we do get, the next leg to it, I think it's still playable even if you haven't entered in yet and are like buying the bottom, so to speak. It's just a matter of like keeping your eye on when that bull comes. So I think I'm kind of just saying like, regardless of what directions ordinals go from here, there's definitely a good opportunity as long as you're glued in to just like, have that conviction and buy that volume.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, the best thing you can do is like be in the trenches, like just like anywhere that there's interest, like any amount of interest, is like this definitely qualifies as that. Like, there's going to be trading opportunities if you're in the trenches.
I think for me, this cycle, it's been really just focusing on Bitcoin more than anything else. So, like, rather than be spread thin across what's going on every chain, I've been more focused on Bitcoin. I still give some attention to other things that are going on, just not as much. And that's the way I've been playing this cycle. I thought originally that Bitcoin was going to lead this cycle, just with like all the new ordinals and runes and kind of like all the innovations and the developers on Bitcoin kind of taking it to another level. So I kind of felt like even from back in the initial time when ordinals first came out, like in February or March of 2023, like I thought then that Bitcoin was going to lead, and it looks like it appears to be the case, with ETH lagging and then Solana just kind of rising. It seems like everyone else is vying for like number two, where Bitcoin is like the clear number one.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And like if you're like paying attention only to this, and everybody else is trying to juggle like multiple chains, like you're doing like 4 times the amount of effort that they are just at this. Like that's gonna be reflected in your trades.
Oh, for sure. And then plus, when you're also kind of surround yourself with people with like the same like mind as you, you're just kind of ahead of the curve when you do that.
I do want to ask you this, Lizard, and then we can definitely wrap up. Don't see too many questions coming in, but in terms of what you're talking about of putting your efforts or attentions into a certain spot, I know that as traders we all have different styles. What's sort of your style of spreading your attention? Are you someone who goes and looks at lots of different chains? Do you like to like focus your attention in one place? I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are in terms of focus and what its value can be.
Sure, man. Yeah. So I think if you have a really good idea, and like if you're really like convicted about a certain thing, you should probably focus all of your effort there. Just because of like, so even if it doesn't pan out exactly how you thought it would, like it's, as long as there's some amount of activity, like you're still gonna succeed there. So like what I typically try to do as far as attention goes is like from like a very high level, I spread it across, like try to see what other people are doing, and I try to like evaluate a lot of different things. So like I try to at least understand what everything is that's happening, and then if something is really interesting to me, then I'll pretty much focus on it exclusively until it becomes like uninteresting, or until something else becomes more interesting. And then if like nothing is interesting at the moment, just basically keep scouting for something that is interesting.
I love that, because I feel like haven't been making that many moves recently, but I'm in what you just said, like scouting phase.
Yeah, I love it.
Awesome. I appreciate the insight, dude. Yeah, I think that's it for me, Waf. Unless you got any more questions for Lizard here. And Lizard, if you have any questions for us or the audience, feel free if there's anything top of mind for you. But otherwise, dude, really appreciate you making some time. You're definitely a guest I've wanted to have on here for a while. Always appreciate your insights. And to everyone in the audience, yeah, thanks for coming in on a Monday.
Yeah, this was fun, man. Thanks for having me. This was a really good chat. And it's good to hear about like everybody's different approach to everything.
Yeah, Lizzie, I didn't know you were like originally in Ordinals and got Ross Boss into it. That's news to me, so that was cool to find out, because I used to always talk to you in the DFS thread, and I know you kill it there on the Rainmaker level too, so it's good to see that you're killing it on multiple fronts.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, that's the goal, man.
That is the goal.
Yeah, dude. Admittedly, Lizard showed me puppets to get me into ordinals, and like, I just still can't get over how funny puppets are from a collection and just like concept. I just love stuff that like would break a normie's mind if you showed them just like how much you spent on this picture. But I think Lizard showed them to me when they were definitely under $1,000. They were maybe like $500 to $800 range. And I was just like, okay, I don't really know about this, but like, thanks for letting me know. And then just kept digging into them and looking at them more and more. And I was like, why can't I stop thinking about these puppets made in MS Paint? Like these little monkeys are so funny. Like just from there, the artwork is so perfect. I think in terms of just to your point, it becoming a casino and like the fact that this is one of the leading projects is just so fun for me. So it was a fun onboarding process.
Yeah, man. I feel like that's when you know. Like when we used to trade art blocks, like there were some that you'd look at and be like, ah, it's all right. And then there's others that you would like stare at and like look at them for a long time. Like I feel like that's what you know.
Yeah, absolutely. But all right, as always, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Definitely, if you got any value or insight from Lizard Capital popping by, throw him some blesses or throw WAF some blesses as always. Always a pleasure hosting. And yeah, another great show. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys, and thank you, Lizard, for hopping on the show with us.
All right, yeah, that was fun. Thanks, guys.